when they are listening and then get excited about history, what do you envision them doing? What is the action? Like they're listening to, or they finish listening to a podcast and they do something. What is that action?
So they could learn more about whatever topic I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because what I give is a pretty basic outline. And so I'm hoping that they'll get interested enough to want to dive deeper.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's the non-selfish answer. Let's now delve into the selfish answer.
Hello and welcome to the third season of Podcast to Connect, where we are sharing ways for you to grow your audience by looking at your greater media presence and longer term project goals. I am so excited this season to be joined by April from Doorkeep Podcast, and you'll see her in just a minute. But I wanted to tell you some information first about this conversation that we had about calls to action, your CTAs, your podcast. Why? It might seem obvious, but marketing studies have shown that people do things more when you tell them you want them to do them. I know. Look, you can't argue with research. So ask your listeners to follow your podcast, to share the episode with a friend, and so on and so forth. In this conversation, we're focused on clear, actionable, and simple CTAs that your listeners can do, any of them can do. I guide April through workshopping her podcast of CTAs. The CTAs, the call to actions that she has in her podcast episode. But we don't stop there because I go for practical, right? So we actually plan out the CTAs she wants, where to put them in the podcast. And through all of that planning, we actually dive into her Apple Podcast consumption data over on Apple Podcast Connect. It's super fun to look at to see how long people listen to your podcast. So we do all of that in this short episode that you can take and use to grow your own audience by having them do actions to help you spread the word about your podcast. Now, remember that all of these episodes this season come with a companion guide to help you do for your podcast what we're doing for April's podcast in these episodes. They are available over at podcasttoconnect.substack.com the week after the episode comes out. So the episodes are every 2 weeks and the companion episodes are the alternate weeks. All right, let's get back to April's call to action. Let's dive into the unselfish ones now.
As someone who's building up a podcasting community, whether you plan on monetizing at some point or not is not the point right now. But as someone who's building up the community, what action do you want them to do for Doorkey?
I want them to subscribe to the podcast, listen to every episode. And if they know someone that would be interested in that particular topic, to pass it on, share it, that sort of thing.
So I love that. So your goal of the podcast is very non-selfish. You really want to get people interested in history.
Yeah.
Love that. Can hear that in your episodes. Absolutely. The non-selfish ones are the ones to, perpetuate or to spread the community, to spread the podcast, to keep growing as an entity. You've got 4 of them. Now, the big question is, do you have these call to actions, the 4 things you want them to do, the actions you literally want them to do? Do you have them in your podcast now? Where do you have them? And we might go into where they might be in the newsletter, but we'll probably stick to the audio for now.
Sure.
You can reach me at dorkypod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let me know if I left something out or got something wrong, or let me know if there's something in particular in history that you'd like me to talk about. There's a Facebook group called Doorkey Podcast, and all the other social medias are at DoorkeyPod. Join them and be part of our growing community, but also to get extra tidbits about episode topics, like facts and pictures. There's also now 2 different ways to donate to the podcast if you'd like. You can donate through PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee. Links to both methods are on the podcast's website and in the show notes. Also, please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're hearing it. It helps the podcast grow, but more importantly, your feedback will help me make this a better podcast. This episode was edited by Stephanie Fuccio of Coffee Like Media. Thank you so much for listening. Until we meet again, friends.
I did find it interesting how different your CTAs were to what you said. And there's nothing wrong with that. The big thing in this reflection, the CTA reflection, is making a conscious choice of what you want in there. Does it match what you want, or is it kind of what you think should be in there, or something like that? For the CTAs, the call to actions, which ones did you note?
Oh, I did tell people to subscribe. I told them where they could.
I heard rate and review, and how to financially support the show. So like where to go to pay to support the show. Perfectly fine. Well, the rate and review one I can argue all day on, but the financial one is completely understandable. We need to keep these puppies going. Big question is, do you have, because you use Buzzsprout as do I, you have the option of a pre-roll before the episode starts, a mid-roll somewhere in the middle, and a post-roll at the end of the episode. Do you use any of the other two?
I do not.
Okay. So here's the situation. You've got potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 CTAs and 3 spots.
Okay.
So what you can do, if you want to keep all 6 and just rotate them out, since you have 2 episodes a month, you could either do the same ones, like 1, 2, 3 in those 3 positions for 1 month and then switch them out every other month. Or you could downsize to 3 of them and keep them in forever and never have to remember this, or forever until you change it. Or you could do a more complicated version that I won't go into because my brain gets complicated. It gets way too complicated. Of those 6 CTAs, listen to all episodes, follow on podcast app, follow Substack, share with a friend, rate and review, and support financially. Of those 6, which one, gut reaction, don't think, feel, which one do you want them to hear first?
Listen
To all the episodes? Yeah. Cool beans. Okay. So what you probably want to do then is change that dynamic ad insertion to be that call to action, and tell them why. Tell them what you said at the beginning, that I'm doing this to inspire you to learn, to want to go and learn more about history. And I also want you to listen to all the stinking episodes. So when you're done with this one, be sure to go back and listen to a lot of them. Tell them that. Have fun with it. It doesn't have to be a minute long. You could do 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I bet it would be so adorable. I mean, I don't want to downplay it. Like, adorable can be an insult. I mean that as a compliment.
Thank you.
But absolutely do that. Okay. So what would you say is the second most important one?
Sharing.
Okay. Where?
On their social media.
Okay.
I'm sorry
if
I'm not trying to be
No,
big.
no, not a problem. It's just that a lot of listeners still don't know what to do.
Okay.
So when we say share, they're listening on an app that has no sharing function. And they're like, what do you mean?
That's a good point. Maybe it should be follow on social media, so that would kind of lead to them sharing.
You can actually 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. You could say something like, take a screenshot of this episode and share it on social media. Be sure to tag Dorky Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they tag you, they'll probably follow you. You can definitely follow them. Blah, blah, blah. But you could do that. Most people know how to screenshot these days. And if you say on any platform, then they can go to the social media they know.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's primarily my problem with rate and review, is that most people don't know how to do it, or they don't have access to the ones that everybody talks about.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an Android user, when people say go to Apple Podcasts, I'm like, I can't. I just can't.
Same.
It's something I can do.
Yes. Yeah.
So you could do that as a mid-roll if you wanted. Again, it doesn't have to be long.
Okay.
But tell them how to do it, because a lot of people are still unclear what to do, how to do it. So we still have one more before we get to the post roll. The big question, because that is a tricky place to put something. Do you know your Apple Podcast consumption rates? Like how far into most episodes people go?
I do not. Anytime I have gone to the Apple app, it's not giving me any information. So I have no idea what my consumption rates are.
Oh.
Like these whole 2 years.
Yeah. This is your podcast. Then you go to analytics. Here we go. So last 60 days, let's do all time. Okay. So what we want to look at, and this is in Apple Podcast Connect, or for the listeners, it's where you first submitted your podcast and then forgot about it. This is actually where you can, if you have enough data, see some information on your analytics. So we're on analytics and I want more. What do I want more? I want consumption data, like the percentage that people are listening. Here we go. All right. Oh, yes. I love your reaction. All right. So the main thing we want to see, there's 43 followers, listeners, engaged listeners, plays. I'm looking for consumption data. This stuff down here, countries, cities, I think a lot of that ends up in Buzzsprout. Yeah. Although keep in mind, this is just people using Apple products. This is not everybody listening.
Right.
So, but I'm looking for, here we go. Consumption data should be here. This one here, average consumption.
Okay.
So 59, 95, 73, 65, 117. So somebody went back again to listen. 78.
That's lovely.
Right? I love when I see that. 66, 75, 33, 55. So what I'm looking for is how many people go to the end, like what percentage go to the end.
And it doesn't look like many.
No, there's some. Oh my God, 190%? King Tut. Yeah, I can see that. 79% Edgar Allan Poe. I re-listened to that last week. Thank you for that.
Aw.
94%.
Okay.
Jack the Ripper, 97. Wow. That makes sense because true crime is a pretty big podcast, very, very popular podcast thing. So I'd say 50. You know what? You have enough people in the 90s and 100% that I'd say go ahead and do a post roll, but I wouldn't spend as much time on it as I would the pre and mid roll.
Okay.
Yeah. If most of your stuff was below 50%, I'd say don't even worry about that until we get the length of time that people are listening higher. Okay. But I think this is close enough. So I would do one. Now, which one do you want to do? So far, what's up?
I'm just really, I've never seen those numbers. I can't believe I was afraid people have been listening for like 2 minutes and then they're like, no, thank you.
No. Isn't that nice? Yeah, that's the thing. It's like downloads and this data, it doesn't show everything, but it does tell us a story. And the story is not only are people listening to a lot of the episodes, but some people are re-listening.
Oh my gosh.
That's so cool. And you can log into that later now because it looks like that glitch when we first started working together is over.
Okay.
So when you log back in, you can spend more time and go through all of the stuff in there and look at everything. Yeah. Yeah. But you have that post roll that you can use now. So what do you want to do with that? Do you want what's left? It's follow on our podcast app, Substack, or support financially.
Follow on Substack?
Sure. There's no wrong answer. I'm just writing down what you say. Yeah. That's good because then in Substack, you can have the different monetary support options.
Yeah.
So that could be like the next step for them. So it's like giving them different ways they can support the community. And that's the next level. Yeah. And honestly, if they do the first call to action that you have in the before the intro, the pre-roll, that's like listen to all of the episodes. If they do that, they're probably going to subscribe. So that'll take care of number 2. So yeah, I think we've covered the 6 in sly ways in 3.
My gosh.
Yay. So now you have all the work to do.
That's okay.
Because you have to go record that pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll. And then see if it works.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You can track it maybe, but okay, let's talk about tracking for a second. Listen to all the episodes. You know what? I wonder, okay, if you listen to this when it is published, mark down the date it goes out and see if your stats change in the few weeks after that.
Okay.
Because if people start hearing that and they go, yeah, I do want to hear more episodes, and you start seeing that in the downloads, then you know that CTA is working.
Okay.
And you might even want to put a reminder for like a month after to definitely take a look at that. And if it doesn't look like it's working, then maybe go back and say, listen to one more episode instead of all of them and make it a little bit easier. But if it is working that first month, leave it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd put like a 1 month calendar reminder for that.
Is that like not, I don't know if presumptuous is the right word, but is that like asking a lot to be like, listen to every episode? I mean, obviously that's like a pipe dream type.
The way you say it has such enthusiasm with it that I want to say do it and see what happens.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, they don't listen to any more than the ones that come out. Yeah.
Right.
Which is no loss at all. And
Right.
you have a month of that. And then you see those stats and you see what's happening and you go, okay, let's try one. And then you switch it out. So I would try it because I wonder, because the way that you say it and the enthusiasm that I think you're going to put into the pre-roll, I think people might actually go download a few and listen to them over like the next few days and weeks and what have you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fun and playful. I would try it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all an experiment. You never know until you do it. So then the mid-roll is share with a friend, and you're going to describe how they share it and how often. Make that one simple because the first one's a big ask. So make the second one a small ask, like share with one person today or email one person today or something like that.
Okay.
Third one, the post roll is Substack, and that you can track by looking at your subscriptions. And again, I would do a month-long, a reminder after a month to see if you're getting them. And in Substack, you can actually see how people are coming into the where they're subscribing from.
Okay.
So if they go from the podcast to Substack, it should show up in the information there. So that should be pretty easy to track.
Okay.
So goals and tracking. And this is the thing. We spent 20 minutes honing in on the 3 call to actions and like 2 minutes deciding on how to track it.
Yeah.
and that's how it is, because it's the hardest thing to figure out what you want to ask them to do that's reasonable, that's doable, that you can put out there.
Right.
And then tracking, it's the easy part.
Yeah.
Deciding and implementing stuff, that's the hard part.
So we have figured out how to put all of April's call to action into specific places of her podcast. Now, this is going to vary per person. You don't want to follow her exact pattern because that fits her audience, her podcast, her consumption rate. So you want to take all this information and apply it to your specific podcast situation. Remember, you can get a companion guide that'll walk you through how to do that the week after this episode comes out at podcast2connect.substack.com.
All right, cool. Until next time, say bye, April.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.